It's pretty funny, isn't it? Postpartum weight loss, everything that you need to know, kind of. Okay, so before we dive in, I want to say that I was really nervous about sharing this because I do not want to add to the noise around shrinking and snapping back after pregnancy. However, I also understand the frustration that can be experienced when you kind of feel like you're in a body that you've never been in before. Yeah, it's pretty funny. I also realize, and I kind of want to apologize to actually, all the women that I've worked with in the past, oh, sneezy, who have expressed this desire to lose weight, and I've kind of washed over it with this really, honestly, low empathy, kind of toxic positivity advice like, oh, but you're amazing, you just gave birth. And while all of that is true, and you are amazing, and you did just give birth, it doesn't take away from the fact that you feel disoriented in this new-ish kind of body. And I speak from experience now. So I wanted to talk through the misconceptions around postpartum weight loss and hopefully offer some insight into how I went from 50 kilos pre-pregnancy to 72 kilos during pregnancy, and then now at 4 months postpartum back to 55 kilos. Now, everyone's journey is different, but I do get asked this a lot, so I thought that I would share my personal journey with it. So here's today's roadmap. We will talk about pregnancy weight gain, what's causing it, because sometimes I think that we gloss over what is truly happening in our bodies outside of just the baby. I will touch on some of the misconceptions about postpartum weight loss, especially looking at whether you can diet while breastfeeding. We'll look at what nutrition is worth focusing on, how to start exercising, especially when you're feeling time poor and tired, or when you are time poor and tired. Now, before we get into the informational part of the video, I just want to say this. Mama, you are doing amazingly. And if at any point of this video you feel overwhelmed, just take it all with a pinch of salt. It's one thing to be told, oh, it's easy, just do XYZ for weight loss or for health. In reality, when parenting, there are so many other variables impacting your experience. Like, I would even go as far to say that it's not the baby making postpartum weight loss tough. It's like all the other variables that are also not talked about. Making weight loss or even physical activity or good nutrition, just not that easy. You're navigating the relationship you now have with your partner and how it's changed. You're navigating all the people who want to visit the baby. You're sleep deprived. There's all this new life admin. There are different bills to pay. Health and fitness and nutrition and weight loss just really feels like less of a priority until you have like a moment to yourself and you suddenly think, oh my God, I've let myself go, or I should really be taking better care of myself. How do all these mum influencers look so great immediately postpartum? So I just wanted to remind you that this video is a guide. It's here to hopefully organize some ideas around where to go with your health and weight loss journey. It's not about pressuring you into it or suggesting that it should even be at the forefront of your mind. But if it is, hopefully you take something from this. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so very quickly, let's break down the key factors contributing to weight gain during pregnancy and the changes that occur postpartum. I'm sorry if my shirt is still covered in Ayana's dribble. She has actually started teething really early and one of her little vampire teeth is coming through. Even though she's only 4 months, I know it's very early, but she's gnawing on everything and I can really feel it. Anyway, during pregnancy, to support the placenta and obviously the growing fetus, your body increases blood volume by up to 50%. And that increase is obviously necessary to transport oxygen and nutrients to the baby, but it does contribute to weight gain. Now, in addition, pregnant bodies retain more fluid to accommodate the expanding uterus and prepare for that blood loss during delivery. So this fluid retention or edema contributes to weight gain and is definitely noticeable in the legs and the ankles and the feet. I certainly noticed it. Now, there's also fat storage. Your body naturally stores extra fat during pregnancy, and this serves several important functions, including obviously providing energy for labor, the delivery process, and supporting your breastfeeding needs postpartum. Now, this fat storage contributes significantly to that pregnancy weight gain. We have to be okay with that. Now, also, there is, I don't need to tell you, an increase in breast size, preparing the body for lactation, and that growth of breast tissue adds to, again, your weight gain. We've also got the fact that our uterus grows exponentially. It starts as a pear in the non-pregnant state and goes to like the size of your growing baby, which obviously varies depending on who you are. And then you've got the weight of the baby and the placenta and the amniotic fluid. All of this, it really adds up to increase that number. So when you look at it, it makes you feel like, whoa, how is it so high? But when you think about all these factors, of course, it makes sense. Okay, now for me, I actually had this added stress of my baby not growing and freaking out because I thought that it was because I wasn't eating enough. So I increased my calories. That wasn't really the case. But I'd also read about something called the FOD Model, which is the fetal origins of adult disease. Now, it's actually a little bit controversial, but let's take a little detour to go over what that is. Okay, so the FOD model, or the fetal origins of adult disease model, is a very significant concept in the developmental origins of health and disease. What do you think? Now, this model suggests that the environment and the nutritional status of a mother during pregnancy can have really lasting effects on the health of her offspring, including predispositions to non-communicable diseases like obesity, like diabetes, and heart disease later in life. Do you like Michael Jordan? Yeah, kind of. Whoa, I know. One key aspect of this theory involves epigenetic changes, which are modifications that affect gene expression without altering the DNA sequence itself. Isn't that right? So if a mother is malnourished during pregnancy, it can actually trigger epigenetic changes. Yeah? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? It can actually trigger epigenetic changes in the developing fetus, potentially kind of switching on, although that sounds oversimplified, genes that are associated with obesity and other metabolic conditions. Now, this adaptive response can serve to improve the fetal and newborn survival by enhancing fat storage and altering their metabolism in response to a scarce environment. However, if the little one is later exposed to a very calorie-rich environment, well, this predisposition to store can actually lead to an increased risk of obesity and metabolic diseases. So basically, one of the biggest contributors to obesity is not laziness, is not a lack of discipline. It's actually living in a calorie-dense environment, right? A calorie-rich environment, which may be even more exacerbated, at least according to this model, if the pregnant body was malnourished. Anyway, of course, everything is more complicated and multifactorial than this, but personally, I do think it's worth knowing. Do you think it's worth knowing? Oh yeah, you hold the mic. Actually, especially this is a good time to flag that I'm not trying to make you anxious, but I recently heard about this trend of having a skinny pregnancy. And if you were considering this, if you were influenced by this trend or this kind of goal, hopefully you'll reconsider based on the fetal origins of adult disease. Do you have any further thoughts on the matter? Let's get back to the rest of the video. Okay. Back to pregnancy weight gain and the postpartum changes and misconceptions about weight loss. So after delivery, we're going to lose the extra fluid accumulated during pregnancy through increased urination and sweat, and obviously like the blood loss. And this leads to like a rapid decrease in weight in the first few weeks postpartum. Now, the uterus also begins to shrink back to that pear size, that pre-pregnancy size, in a process called involution. And again, this does contribute to postpartum weight loss, but it takes quite a few weeks. Now, everyone loves to talk about breastfeeding, particularly for weight loss, and yes, it may burn up to 500 calories. However, the effect of breastfeeding on weight loss can really vary among all of us, and something I want to touch on here is that our appetite ramps up. So we think we're going to experience super easy weight loss if we breastfeed, but actually your body is way smarter than that, and it has ways of getting you to eat. Now, remember, we are going to talk about whether breastfeeding and being in a calorie deficit is appropriate, because often we're told in like this one blanket statement, like you shouldn't be in a calorie deficit during pregnancy, and actually it's just not true. Not necessarily. Some people shouldn't, but it's always case dependent, so we can't just sort of like give this one umbrella answer for everyone. Now, the delivery of the placenta immediately reduces weight as it exits the body, so that's another reason you get that kind of rapid weight loss afterwards. Obviously, that pregnancy fat storage, over time, that does start to reduce. However, the rate at which this fat is lost varies massively, and it can be influenced by obviously diet, activity level, metabolism. So basically, the same goddamn rules apply that always apply. It's just that now you have kids. Now you are busier. Now you're not the priority the way that other people losing weight might be. And that's where I want to touch on these weight loss misconceptions. Perfect segue. The main ones being breastfeeding makes you lose weight, that you shouldn't be in a calorie deficit while breastfeeding, and that the weight will just slip off. Remember, there are some funky hormonal and lifestyle changes that have occurred. So if you want to lose the weight, you do have to make considerations that accommodate for these new factors. Let's get on with it. Okay, I want to quickly deal with these misconceptions. So breastfeeding makes you lose weight. As I touched on this a little bit, it's really not possible to make a blanket statement like this because that postpartum stage is just wild, particularly newborn. Like, not only might your physical activity have reduced, but you're also sleep deprived, which definitely impacts your appetite. You're potentially stressed. It's just not possible to say, oh, breastfeed and you'll lose weight. Like, the energy balance rules, they still apply. So if you want to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. And that deficit is actually quite difficult to facilitate if you're guessing and trying to navigate that postpartum stage. Now, does that mean I recommend tracking calories immediately after having a baby? Absolutely not. It would actually be quite ridiculous to make that statement. And I think unless your doctor or your physician or specialist is pushing you to do it for medical reasons, just focus on your baby and your partner and yourself and your family. Now, if you're way past that newborn phase and you're breastfeeding and you aren't stressed, but equally you're like, I breastfed, like why didn't this weight just drop off? Well, maybe a calorie deficit is worthwhile exploring, which brings me to that next misconception. Hello, that you shouldn't be in a calorie deficit while breastfeeding. Now, this is where I have to shout out my friend's podcast here, Not Another Nutrition Podcast by Martin McDonald. If you're not subscribed to his podcast, I would highly recommend doing it. He is a clinical performance nutritionist and he is brilliant. Anyway, according to the research that he shared and then a little bit of a further deep dive that I did on other research, essentially, gradual weight loss, less than or equal to 2 kilos per month, seems to have no adverse effect on milk volume or composition, provided that the mother is not malnourished or undernourished and is breastfeeding her infant on demand. That's what the research says, because you can't really ethically run randomized controlled trials on whether more aggressive dieting is safe on lactating mothers, right? We just don't really know if more weight loss is actually okay. So a nuanced view is acknowledging that a black and white statement that calorie deficits are just downright bad during breastfeeding would actually just be silly. In the same way that it would be silly for me to say that you definitely should be in a deficit when breastfeeding, right? That would be actually ridiculous. So I know I'm not really giving you like a final statement, but black and white statements kind of really irritate me. One of the main things that appear to implicate breastfeeding is sleep and hydration, and I can attest to that anecdotally. Hi, Future Shona here, just coming in to clarify something. Sleep can definitely impact milk production, and one study I found suggested that partners might like to help breastfeeding mothers or breastfeeding fathers to get those first few hours of sleep in order to maximize their deep sleep and ultimately their milk production. But hydration is a bit different. Hydration doesn't directly impact milk production, or at least as far as we know in research. However, it is important to remember that hydration will impact your overall experience of breastfeeding, and even though your body will prioritize milk supply to the baby, right? So it'll steal your hydration to give to the baby. It does so at the cost of other things like fluid to your colon. And then you end up constipated, and that, my wonderful YouTube family, is awful. And I talk about it a bit later. So anyway, should we get back to the video? Let's go back to the past. Back to the future? No more future talk. All right, back to the video. The one that irritates me the most of these misconceptions is that the weight will just slip off. Like, you are managing so much postpartum, right? Sleep deprivation, navigating baby life, hormonal changes, and therefore appetite fluctuations. There's family around, and sometimes they do want to help, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they want to cook for you, or maybe you don't have any of that. And actually, you're scrambling for the easiest food that you can find. So takeout happens a lot. Like, I'm not trying to dishearten you, but also if you've ever tried to diet or lose fat, when you're not dealing with all those things that I just mentioned, like, you'll know it's hard even then. You really want to weigh in on this conversation. So what I would like to talk about is, what are some of the strategies for navigating some kind of postpartum weight loss in a healthy way that nourishes you, how to exercise postpartum when you are sleep deprived. There's the burp we've been waiting for. Thank you. So that's what we're going to talk about now. nutritional strategies, tips, tricks, and of course, how to kind of keep that physical activity going even when you are sleep deprived. So what nutritional principles should we be sort of aiming for? And I hate using the word should. There are no shoulds, but I do think that these are good places to put your focus and attention when you are postpartum. The first one is making sure that you're keeping your protein high. And there are a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is just generally speaking, most women, and I'm going to talk really kind of like general statements here, obviously not all women, but generally speaking, most women don't tend to get enough protein. And that can be due to a number of reasons. For some people, it's because you're afraid of getting bulky. For others, it's because you're not sure of what has enough protein in it. Some people are eating and consuming vegan, vegetarian diets. And sometimes there's just like a lack of education in like what is high protein. For example, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I have a high protein breakfast. I have 2 eggs for breakfast. Well, I'm going to tell you now that that's not that high. Or I have an egg for breakfast along with some toast. It's like, well, there's actually only, I think from memory, 6 grams of protein in an egg. So if you're having 2 eggs, you're getting 12 grams of protein. I would say that that's on the lower end. What we want to aim for is like 20 grams or above, sometimes even 30 per meal. Now, that's not really a good way to make that calculation. When it comes to protein, I would say eating no less than 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Sorry if you work in imperial metrics. I don't know how to convert that for you. I mean, I would on Google. You can Google it. This is important because we're not getting enough, generally speaking, but also because if you are in a calorie deficit, so if you are trying to lose weight, what we want to do is hold on to our muscle as much as possible, and we want to lose and drop body fat, ideally. And one way to do this is ensuring that we're keeping that protein high. Another way to do this is ensuring that we're also doing enough weight training or resistance-based training to maintain that muscle mass. We'll talk about that in a second. As I already mentioned, one of the things that can implicate your breastfeeding, your lactation, is actually hydration. And so breastfeeding women really need to make a conscious effort to do this. And I'm going to speak from experience. That has been one of the hardest things for me to do. And I have suffered greatly for it. The way in which I have suffered is through severe and aggressive and very painful hemorrhoids. Never thought I'd say that online to all of you, but you know, sharing is caring. Don't let yourself get dehydrated to the point that you are constipated and then suffer from hemorrhoids. So I've had to be very, very good at keeping that hydration high and at the same time taking Movicol or Osmolax, which helps to draw water into the colon. It's actually not something that is making you need to go to the toilet, because that doesn't help. That can actually be more irritating. So taking Senna to help you kind of increase your need to go to the toilet is not effective, because it can just irritate it even more. It's more like taking something that's going to draw water and soften that stool. I try to say it in a nice sensual manner, but why am I trying to make poop sensual? It really doesn't need to be sensual. It's just matter of fact, stay hydrated, because breastfeeding will dehydrate you like a mother. I'm not going to say it. And then last but not least, and definitely this list that I've given you of 3 points is not like an exhaustive list of things that you need to be aware of, but I would highly recommend, as I paused, I was like, oh, I also want to say this other thing. Fiber is really important. Generally speaking, most people don't get enough. We need to have between 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. So making sure that you're getting enough vegetables in. If you've had a baby, your ability to focus on nutrition becomes very, very difficult, or at least I have found this. In theory, it's great to know all of these different nutritional protocols that you should be following or that you should aim to follow. But then day to day, you're like, oh, great, I had a banana, cool. And then I race to something else and oh, look, it's 5 p.m. Great, I managed to eat some takeout and then I had this leftovers in the fridge. It's really hard to really be tracking like 25 grams of fiber a day or this much protein a day. So this is where I think the last nutritional point I want to make, other than getting adequate fiber and getting adequate protein and hydration, is find systems that are going to support you to make quick and easy decisions about your nutrition. So what that may mean is food prep, getting your partner to help you with food preparation. This is something that I think that dads can really help with, because particularly in that first newborn phase, some men can find that they feel a little bit like hopeless. Like, how do I support my partner when it's just like suddenly goes like baby mama, only baby and mama life together. Instead of it being like this kind of like nice family unit, it really feels like baby and mama. And papa is like yo, should I leave? Like, do you guys, what's happening? No, you should not leave. What you can do is help to prepare food and ensure that your baby mama is eating enough food to help her body, also help your baby's body. So food prep is huge. That's gonna mean that you have to do, as a mama, less work when making those nutritional decisions. So send this video to papas as well. Shouldn't just be mamas watching this. If you're not a papa, if you're mama as well, that isn't doing the baby part, but's doing the traditional papa part, the part that we used to call the papa part. You know what I'm saying. Sorry to be so gendered in my language. I am out of practice. If you are a single mama or you're doing this all by yourself, then my other advice would be to make things a bit easier for you. I had a client that was in that situation, and so she just worked out, spent a bit of time working out which foods were simple to kind of consume throughout a day and had the fiber amounts that she needed or the protein amounts that she needed. And so one thing she did was she just said to me, I aim to eat a bag of spinach a day, whether it's putting it in my omelette or putting it in my whatever, salad, dinner. She just knew she had to get through one bag a day. And I thought that was a really great heuristic-ish kind of, sort of. You know what I mean? Tips like that. Let's talk about exercise. Okay, exercising when you are sleep deprived, when you are sore, when you are recovering from a C-section. I mean, that's a whole other topic in and of itself, so we might have to address that later on. But just generally when your body is healing, then obviously the advice is to rest. However, the thing that we need to also understand is that movement is actually very healing for our body. And in order to heal, we also need to be moving, because the lymphatic system, which is a huge part of your immune system as well, contributes to your immune function, requires movement. That lymphatic fluid requires movement to be pushed through the body. It's not being pushed through the body by something like your blood, which is pumped by your heart, right? So we do need to be like contracting our muscles, moving, ambulating in some way to support our systems. So to just tell someone to like lay on the couch and rest, or to just be like baby only and sitting down the whole time, is not actually conducive to recovery, nor is it obviously conducive to that physical activity that you want to start to increase. So all of that being said, when you're sleep deprived, the last thing that you want to do is consider exercise. This is where walking and just keeping a track of your steps can be really beneficial, because walking is one of those things that we tend to be able to do even if we are a little bit sleep deprived. There is also some research, which I will, hopefully if I can find it, hopefully if it's open access, I will put it in the comments below. But it looks at the fact that one night of sleep deprivation can actually benefit from exercise the next day. Long-term sleep deprivation, not so much, and you do need to try to really work on your sleep. But now I'm kind of a bit mad about that statement, because, you know, in reality, parenthood, like I'm lost for words. Like what am I can't say anything here, right? Let's say you're sleep deprived, but you are recovered more or less from that sort of initial postpartum healing, right? You've been cleared to exercise and you're like, oh, what do I do when I'm feeling so tired, but equally I can't just not exercise? This is where I recommend understanding how to train at home. The reason being is that if you have to go out somewhere and train, the reality of that is going to be difficult. Not just from a time perspective, but also just from an effort perspective. If you have your equipment at home, easy to reach, then you can train. If your baby cries, if something needs to be done, if you need to stop, for example, you can stop and then pick it back up later with very little stress or strain on your schedule or yourself or your family even. That being said, understanding how to train effectively at home can be difficult. And this is where I'm going to do a shameless plug of my programs, because my programs do cater to that, because it's just play and go, baby. You know what I mean? Like you just have to hit play and we follow along. We do the exercise together. All the progressive overload, all the explanation of how to do the exercise, I give you in the video. There are both tutorials on how to execute each of the exercises before the workout, and then in separate video, you've got your follow along workout. So I don't have to disrupt you to be like, this is how you lunge, this is how you squat. We do that separately, because once you've gotten used to the workouts, obviously, like, you don't need to hear me say that every single time. It's pretty funny, isn't it? Gym training. So if you do have the luxury of going to the gym, then of course I would say, again, not having a plan is going to set you back. Look, I'm just speaking from experience. If I've ever gone into the gym, particularly postpartum, when I was in that sort of state of going like, I don't really know what program I should follow, and that was in that initial stage of the newborn phase, I really didn't know where I should be putting my focus. And so I kind of just like wandered around the gym, and it made me feel worse. As soon as I figured out what I wanted to do, what my goals were, where I really wanted to take this, and my body recovered a little bit, I then was able to go, okay, I'm going to write my program and focus. And this really, really helps on those days when you are sleep deprived, because you don't want to have to make so many decisions. You just want to kind of follow the steps. Head to my website if you are currently in that state. If you're kind of like, you're approved to exercise, but you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what my goals are. And have a look at the programs that I have there. Train at the gym, train at home, wherever you want to train. We got you covered, don't we, baby? Thank you so much for joining me with that video. I hope that you took something away from it. What has your postpartum experience been? I would love the comment section to just be a place where mamas, papas, everyone can just share their concerns, their experiences, their tips, their tricks for all of this stuff, navigating this stuff. I think number one thing as well is like community, and sometimes we don't all have the luxury to have community. So I really do want you guys to rely on the community that we have here on YouTube. So please let me know anything and everything about your own postpartum experience and postpartum weight loss. And if you have any questions, let me know.